let's install Daytona on Civo. So I've got an instance up and running, but I'll show you how I did that and which I picked. Let's start with create a new instance. I'm out of quota right now, so it's not going to let me start another one, but enter a host name here. You just need one instance. For this particular case, you're going to want to use the 2x large. That's 8 cores and 32 gigs of RAM. I think this is the best sort of mix for this particular host. I would do it hourly. You're going to want Ubuntu. You are going to need a root user or Ubuntu user with sudo. You're going to need a public IP address. I preset up the firewall, and I'll show you what rules you'll need. And then I'm going to use my SSH key. And then you would go ahead and create. What you need in advance is a minimum of 4 vCPU, 16 gigs of RAM, and 200 gigs of disk. I think that double that makes it for a better experience. And with the disk, where possible, if you can get NVMe, that's going to make your life a little bit better as well. Ports wise, you're going to need SSH, so that's port 22. You're going to need 80, 443, HTTP, and HTTPS. And you're going to need 30,000. Daytona uses 30,000 for SSHing into the workspaces. You're going to want to use Ubuntu 22, 04, or Debian. You're also going to need a DNS record or setup. You're going to need one for the domain name. I'm going to use devinv.xyz, and also a second record for the domain name. And that's what we're going to use for all the workspaces. You're going to want to set up an OAuth app with GitHub or GitLab or whatever you're using. We'll leave that exercise for you. The instructions are here, but you're going to need that set up to the domain that you're going to use. Outside of that, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Let's grab this. I've already SSH'd into the example here. We're going to go ahead and get going. The EULA is pretty straightforward. As long as you're using it for evaluation or not commercial reasons, you can use it. If you're going to use it for commercial, you want to use it for longer, reach out to us. So we're going to go ahead and accept that. It's going to do everything that you need from here. It's going to install Helm and Kubernetes and everything else, but it is going to prompt you to set up DNS. And so we'll wait for that to happen. That'll happen after certbot's there. We're going to use Let's Encrypt to do DNS for you. You won't have to do anything else. You'll just need to do DNS. So I'm going to do devinv.xyz. I'm going to use GitHub. I've got these secrets stored in over here. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. So it's going to ask you to do 2 Acme challenges. So in Cloudflare, you do 2 different entries with the same. In Route 53, you need to have multiple lines on for one entry with multiple lines. It's really up to how your DNS gets implemented. And you're going to want to make sure that these records propagate. So you might want to give it some time to make sure that these updates happen. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And then it's going to ask me to enter the second one. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Save. And then I really do recommend going ahead and opening this Google app. And here you'll notice that not only do I have the 2 new ones, so the J8 and the BW, but I also still have the 2 old ones. So those will take a little bit of time to drop out. But because we do have the 2 new ones, this should work and go through. Great. So that's done. The certificate's been validated. You've generated wildcard certificate for the star, and you've generated one for dev.env. So you'll have TLS set up for you. You won't have to worry about it. You won't have to maintain it for the life of the examination or the proof of concept that you're going to run. It's now going to install it. This takes about 5 minutes. And then after it installs it, it's going to go ahead and preload it with a bunch of content. That content is every environment that we have that doesn't have a dev container file is going to use the same base image. We just happen to use one from Microsoft called the universal image, which is kind of a kitchen sink image. It's about 4 gigs. It's got just about everything under the sun in it. It's Go and Python and Ruby and Java, and the list goes on. And it's a great sort of catch-all. You can set it up for whatever you want. But all in all, this entire install process is going to take about 12 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and let this happen, and I'll come back when it's done. All right. So that took something like 18 minutes. But now, if we go over here, go to dev.env, we'll be in Daytona. So this is the dashboard, but you didn't come to see a dashboard. Let's go ahead and launch something. So I'm going to, one of my favorite things about Daytona is that we have a simple API called /hash. So you take your Daytona URL, you add /hash, and then you type in any GitHub repo that you want. So I'm going to do simple-flask. So this is a Python app, and we're going to go ahead and launch that immediately in Daytona. So it'll take a little bit of time since this is a brand new install. It's going to have to pull a Python dev container down from Microsoft. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to get a custom Linux environment just for me, hosted in that instance within Civo. So right now you see the output of what's happening. It's basically the Python environment getting pulled down. It's a container. We build on top of a standard called dev container. We can actually go look at this real quick. So if we go to simple Flask, here it is. And here's the dev container file. So we're going to use Python 3.11, and we're going to customize everything. So not only are we going to customize what's in the box, so the development environment I get, but we're also going to customize VS Code. We're going to make sure that we have all the extensions that we want. We're going to tweak those Python extensions so that we have all the different versions of formatting and linting that we want to have set up. On top of that, we're going to do some workflow automation so that if port 5000 opens, we're going to open the preview. And when the user starts interacting with the workspace, we're going to install the requirements. And when the user attaches to the workspace, we're going to start the server. So if we go back to Daytona, it's going to actually, it looks like it just did the, this is the output of pip install. So it should start the IDE here in a second. There it goes, opening the IDE. Then we're going to have everything we need ready to go. And really, we created an instance in Civo, we installed Daytona, and we got a complete Python environment up in about 27 minutes, which is probably faster than most people get their entire environment up, just the base local environment. And what you'll notice is it just looks like VS Code. This happens to be in a browser. I could also do VS Code locally and just use the local install. Or if I was a fan of JetBrains, I could do any of the JetBrains bits as well. So there's the preview environment up and running. It's just like any other editor. You'll be able to make changes. If you make those changes, you can see them reflected here. So that is how you get started with Daytona on Civo in 20-something minutes.